All right, Stephen. Well, we have a story or two that we actually want to take a closer look at, and of course, they're kind of related to each other. So let's see if you can pick up on the theme here. Intel has made a couple of big moves this week. The first was surprise news that they are exiting the server market. Now, hold on, before you go running off in the comments. They're not giving up on Xeons, and we know that they're going to get Sapphire Rapids out the door. Instead, what they're doing is they're selling off their server integration business. You used to be able to buy a whole server from Intel. Well, now you're going to be buying it from a company called MiTAC, which is an edge to cloud solutions provider and an ODM partner of DSG. Intel's giving MiTAC the rights to manufacture their existing designs. In addition, they've announced that they are getting rid of their Blockscale ASIC line, which was primarily used in Bitcoin miners. When asked about this by some folks in the press, Intel said that they are continuing to focus on IDM 2.0 operations and narrowing what they're going to be concentrating on. Now, Stephen, we talk a lot about Intel, and let's be fair, we love Pat and we love all the things he's doing over there. But man, that transformation seems to be picking up speed now.
Absolutely. It is kind of breathtaking to see all the moves that Intel is making. And honestly, they kind of have to make these moves. I mean, this is a company that, did you know that Intel was in the drone business? Did you know that Intel made servers? And as you say, a lot of people were like, whoa, 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 when this was announced, because they're like exiting the server business and they jumped to Xeon and all that. No, 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 no. That's not what this means. This means that Intel's not going to make the actual server. And if you're saying, I didn't know Intel, yeah, they do. Intel has for a long time used the server business, the NUC business, the motherboard business, graphics card business. All these businesses are ways of building sort of development platforms, seeding the market for their products, and also building reference systems that others can build on and use those same design ideas in their own servers as a way to kind of prove out the product. And, I can absolutely see why that was valuable to Intel, but I can also see why Intel might say, you know what, we shouldn't be in this market. We shouldn't be, in a way, competing with our ODMs that are out there buying Intel processors and products and developing on it. So it makes a lot of sense. It also makes a lot of sense for this to go to MiTAC, which is a company that you may or may not be familiar with, but they make a lot of this stuff anyway. I suspect, I don't know for sure, but I suspect that they were probably involved in building the Intel servers beforehand. I mean, that would make a lot of sense. And so, there you go. You guys have it. It's not a core business for Intel. I do think that this does have a little bit of a threat to Intel in terms of maybe separating them a little bit from the server business and taking away that valuable hands-on experience integrating and building and selling servers. But at the same time, Intel has great partners. I imagine that they could phone up Dell and say, hey, we want to experiment, we want to test, we want to learn about building servers and server technology, and Dell would be probably more than happy to work with them on that. So, and now, of course, MiTAC, Lenovo, HPE, all these companies are out there using Intel's products. I don't see why they need this. So goodbye. Some of this other discussion is a little bit interesting, though. Tom, why don't you talk to us a little bit more about it?
Well, I just wanted to kind of bring up the point that I agree with you 100% that Intel needs to exit all of these businesses. And I know why they're there. And we've talked about this at length. Bob Swan wanted to own every single product line that he could. He wanted everything to fold back into the middle to drive sales of Intel's core business products. But that's not always a sound strategy. I want you to go to your local department store and I want you to look down the list of all the appliances that are there. You're probably going to see the name Daewoo. You would probably buy a Daewoo toaster, wouldn't you? Would you buy a Daewoo car? Did you know they made cars? You might. But you're going to say at some point, if it's a company is known for making toasters, I'm not going to buy their cars. Likewise, Intel may be one of the best chip manufacturing companies on the planet. I don't know if I want to buy their drones. I don't know if I want to buy their autonomous vehicles. Like, there has to be a limit to what you can do. And I think what Pat is honestly trying to do here is, instead of saying, I want to own every possible SKU that can be, like, if you can put a chip in it, we want to make it because we want to put our chips in it and sell more of it. Pat's going, why? Why don't we focus on what we make really well and supply it to other people who make good products so that our products look better when those are there? Think all the way back to the 90s. It was not buy Intel for everything. It was Intel inside, which was honestly one of their best marketing strategies ever. You didn't ask IBM for, a Cyrix chip. You didn't ask them for the original AMD chips. You wanted an Intel chip, right? But you didn't want Intel to build your desktop PC. I have had experience using Intel servers, and you know what? They're great. They're also reference architecture. They are not going to have the little bits and bobs that make them go a little bit faster than everybody else's. They're a good, safe bet. So I think that this is a brilliant way to do it, because when they double down on the things that they're good at, they're going to make more important things like, I don't know, SoCs. They're partnering with ARM to start a new line of SoCs because that's where the money is right now. Nobody, there are people who want Sapphire Rapids. We know that. There are people who want to bring in, some of the desktop, performance, whatever. But honestly, when you think about the fact that most people are carrying around a very powerful computer in their pocket right now, and those are an order of magnitude more likely to sell, I mean, all you got to do is go look at all of the manufacturers, Intel, Apple, any one of the other ones. They're all taking a bath in the non-mobile PC market, laptops, desktops, all that stuff. Nobody's buying that anymore because what happened? They all bought it over the pandemic, and those things have a shelf life, 3, 4, 5 more years. Boy, phones seem to refresh every year. We seem to want to buy those every year. So if you want to make money now, you make money on SoCs. You don't make them on these super complicated chips that require 5 pounds of copper on top of it to keep it cool. Stephen, do you think that Intel is ramping up to kind of attack that market the way that they should, or are you worried that they're just kind of gonna meander around and not have a direction?
Well, I think this whole move, a lot of Intel's moves over the last year have shown Pat's deep understanding of the chip making business. And one of the problems for Intel, in fact, probably the biggest problem for Intel. Now, I'm sorry, hats off to AMD. You're amazing. You're doing great work in the server design business. Hats off to NVIDIA. You're amazing. You're doing great work in the GPU business. But Intel actually had a lot of this technology and could be competitive except for manufacturing. That's the thing that's been holding Intel back. We've had chips delayed because manufacturing was delayed because they weren't ready to build them. We've had whole product lines that were hinging on manufacturing advancements that didn't come. We've had incredible losses in terms of Intel's ability to compete on efficiency, power efficiency, cooling, and so on, because the Intel foundries couldn't offer a competitive product with some of the competition, like TSMC specifically. And Pat has got to know that is the existential crisis for Intel. It's not building servers or drones or even storage devices. It's we've got to be able to build chips that are absolutely leading edge in volume. We've got to be right there. So all of these discussions, I think it all comes back to that core concept. Intel is a manufacturer. They chose not to divest their manufacturing. They chose to be a chip maker. And if they're going to be a chip maker, they've got to be a chip maker. Now, last year, Intel announced that they would produce a Bitcoin mining chip. And we were all like, huh? So the Intel Blockscale chips, we talked about them here on the rundown. And at that time, I remember looking into the camera and saying, this is not Intel saying we want to be in the blockchain market. This is Intel saying we want to fill our foundries with chips that we can make profitably. And okay, we'll make those. So they basically seeded that market to make, keep the production lines going. Well, here it is in 2023, and Bitcoin chips don't look like such a great market anymore. And so Intel's, well, we're not going to do the next generation of that. We're done with that. It's the same thing with a lot of the other Intel products that we've seen discontinued. But again, look at the deal that Intel and ARM are making. This is about manufacturing. This is about Intel figuring out how to fill the foundries, not just with Xeons or graphics chips, but with ARM chips and systems on a chip, like Tom was just mentioning, SoCs. Intel and ARM, ARM's out there, ARM's used everywhere. If Intel can give ARM and ARM manufacturing companies and ARM license holders a platform where they can manufacture leading edge chips with excellent power and excellent thermals, then Intel is going to get a lot of those orders. It's going to fill up the fabs. It's going to keep those fabs humming. And then Intel is going to have leading technology and good cost effectiveness for their own manufacturing, for their own products. It's like, a positive domino effect. Intel needs to keep the fabs full in order to get Xeon out there in front, in order to get their, core desktop processors out there in front, in order to get the graphics processor, everything requires on manufacturing. And that's the only thing Pat cares about, in my opinion, is getting that manufacturing train hooked up and running. And that's what this is about.
And I agree with you, because it turns out that as we look at what's going on in the wider space of chip manufacturing, Intel's position as an American company that has already understood the challenges of things like the CHIP Act may end up paying off for them, because there are reports coming out that TSMC is starting to put the brakes on some of their plans to expand in Arizona, because they want double the subsidies from the U.S. government, but they also don't want to be involved in the profit sharing things that were built into the CHIPS Act. So basically, they want more money to not have to give money back, and they don't like the fact that there's this transparency thing that has to go on. And so now they're starting to say, well, maybe we don't want to build these fabs in Arizona, and maybe we don't want to do this. And over here on the other side is Intel, Pat Gelsinger, who has been to the White House, who has championed this CHIPS Act, who probably knows exactly what's in it and doesn't have a problem with it. And so if companies, TSMC is one of the largest, semiconductor manufacturing companies on the planet. If they're starting to say, maybe we don't necessarily want to be involved in this, do you not think that Pat Gelsinger is going to be sitting over their side going, hey guys, we got some fab space. You want to go with us? Because we're not going to raise a stink about this. We know what's going on. We're totally happy to do it. So maybe they won't be the TSMC fab stuff. But honestly, unless you're doing something hyper specific like Apple, does that really matter? Because Intel's chips are going to be as good, and that's going to give them different areas to compete in, but also to keep those lines running and keep that investment churning and essentially kind of leveling it all out. And then the advantage that I see there is that if Intel can basically kind of create that economy of scale to drive production costs down to their floor, that makes it almost impossible for anybody else to break into that market here in the US. And given the focus that the US has had for a very long time, for the last, say, 2 years, on trying to onshore chip production for critical assets, for military applications, for intelligence applications, it effectively puts Intel in very rarefied air. Now, that being said, Pat, I know you're a fan of the show, and I love that you watch every episode, because I know you watch every episode. Don't rest on your laurels when that happens. You've got to be hungry, and you've got to keep this thing lean, because if it turns into what it did before, you're not going to be able to pick up from the next stumble.